Now for the final and largest accessory, the Duo dock. So I've got it plugged in, and the eject system is actually powered like a VCR. Now this case isn't holding together, so it won't eject and take in quite as smoothly as it normally does, but you know, you get home, slide your laptop in, it grabs it for that last little bit and powers up. Now it pulls about 30 watts, as you can maybe see on the display in the back. You know, which isn't bad for a whole system, considering I've got an extra video card in here, and it's a new bus video card from Raster Ops, which we'll get to. Because you do get 2 new bus slots inside the case, so when you've docked, you can give yourself a better Scuzzy controller, or maybe audio, or a better video controller. So it is pretty cool to be able to dock in and gain all these extra features. One thing I did notice is I believe the hard drive in this is dying, because it's I hear it clicking every once in a while like it's attempting to read. So this is going to be a little odd because the case isn't locked together properly. I have to push it down so the button registers, but then I have to like pry it up a bit so that the eject mechanism works. Although I just heard the spring go, so I doubt it'll eject properly, but we'll give it a shot. So eject. Now it's sending the shutdown signal to the Mac. Oh, it's a little lethargic. Alright, I rebooted. I want to see if I can get this thing to do the proper eject. Again, it's kind of a careful balancing act of moving this down to press the button and not letting... There's a spring mechanism in the top here that pushes it out. So we'll see if we can get it to work again. Okay. See? No clicky. Gotta push it down a bit. There we go. That's a bit better. I think that's probably as good as we're going to get. So it is pretty cool because you could just hit eject and close up the little docking port and you're off. Real quick and easy. You can just... I like the fact that the eject button works with the operating system, and it's you know, so you can hit eject and it will shut down the system and eject the laptop, so you can just, you know, real quick just, okay, I'm on my way to go to work or whatever, or home if this is at work. So let's take a better look at the dock itself. On the right side you can see that there's actually a tucked away floppy drive, which is convenient since the laptop itself doesn't have one. And if I keep going, you can see where the plastic has come off, where everything's just disintegrating. But we've got mains in and out, because back in the day you'd run your connector up to your to power the monitor. The 2 new bus slots, you can see that there's a little adapter installed here for my to switch it over to VGA, because I don't have a VGA card installed. And we've got modem, sound in, sound out. This is a HDI Scuzzy connector used in PowerBooks. I don't know why they didn't give it a normal desktop power or desktop Scuzzy connector when it's clearly designed for desktop use. This is an AAUI port, which is an Apple Attachment Unit Interface. Basically, it gives you an Ethernet port. You'd use a small adapter, and it would give you, you know, 10 base T, which is the most common using the phone style RJ45 connectors. But you could also convert it to other types, fiber or whatnot. And this is only 10 base T. 2 serial ports. As with all Apple devices, well, most Apple devices are labeled printer and modem, even though they're completely interchangeable. They're just 2 serial ports. This is the on-board video out, ADB for keyboard or mouse, and another power connector or power switch, which doesn't really line up properly in the case right now, and another Kingston lock. On the left side of the case, there's an emergency eject button, and there's also a key lock. Now, I have a key. I had 2 of these docks, and one of them died completely, or I got rid of it, I don't remember what. But obviously I kept the wrong key, because this doesn't turn. Even when the laptop's installed, it doesn't turn. But you get an idea. It locks the laptop inside it so no one can walk off with it. And it also, if you look carefully at the icon, it shows that you can also use the key to manually eject the unit. Now, I don't think it will manually eject with a key, because that when it's locked, or else that'd be kind of pointless. But, you know, it is kind of a cool feature, and the official Apple key is pretty neat. In fact, I think the only other device with a key on it made by Apple is the Apple Network server, which had a locking front door. Oh, no, wait. I think the Apple Network server had a key, and so did the Quadra 900 and 950. I think they had a lock key as well. I think the Quadra 950 also had a key, and the 900, and that key would lock the system off, on, and I think on with no keyboard. I think that was the idea, that you could have it as a server and lock it in a way that would prevent you from typing on it. And the Apple Network server also, I believe, had a locking front door on it. So I think those were the only other products that Apple made with an actual key. Because this is at least in part user upgradable, it was fairly easy to get into. You just push the plastic in the front here, and this whole back, or the whole lid, tips off. Now on the lid we've got the little mechanism to close the little front door. There's a piece of metal for rigidity. This is all metal impregnated plastic. And we've also got a big shielding plate here as well. And if you look carefully, there's two of these. These are the mechanisms that eject the laptop when you hit the eject button. They're not the only mechanisms, because there's also springs at the bottom, which we'll get into, but they also help push it out. The receptacle for the laptop has the same docking connector and the same guide pins and the same clamps, but it also has this plastic tab, which I'm not sure. I think this might just be a sensor, like a tilt switch or something. But there's also one here too, so I'm not really sure. Maybe this has to do with the key lock. But when the two side pieces get pushed in, this one blocks an optical sensor here, which lets the system know that there's a device installed. Which is funny, considering, hey, there's also a huge digital connector here, but maybe this lets it charge without knowing if there's any power going into the laptop. Maybe if the laptop's completely dead, this is how it knows. I don't know. It just seems kind of funny that it has to detect it. Maybe it's just there in case the laptop's broken in some way. But there's also a little, this is like a heavy springed ejector on this side. And they have a cutout for another optical sensor. They just didn't use it. And we've got the motherboard for the dock in the back, and a big motor assembly and a power supply, and we'll get into that. The front here has a micro switch for the eject button, a teeny tiny piece of PCB, and it just has two wires running off to the board, and there's some foil shield, the stick-on tight along here, right above the floppy drive. And one thing to note when you're taking one of these apart, there are two screws, one here, that I always forget, and they're slot screws. So you just unscrew those, and then this whole thing kind of disconnects. So the whole top, once you've taken out those screws, you kind of fight with these little plastic standoff things, and the whole top board just comes out. This includes the module which includes the laptop, and it also includes the module which includes the riser card, which has the board cards on it, so they just lift out along with it. The only thing that really stays behind is the power supply, which we'll take a look at, and you just got the chassis with some more foil shield, or metal shield I should say. And I also lost more plastic when I opened it up. This whole back panel just disintegrated. Like I said, this is just crumbling apart. Actually, the new bus slot cover is a lot stronger than the rest of it, it seems. So, this is kind of moderately strong too. But, yeah, it just cracks. This is the key locking mechanism. Now, what I find interesting is that it appears when this is pointed down in the locked position, this comes up and blocks or interferes with the manual eject push button thing. So it turns out this does actually prevent you from using the manual eject when it's locked, which of course makes perfect sense. This is the completely idiotic power supply made by Magnatech, made in Italy of all places. It is a something what? I can't be bothered to add it all up, but it's doesn't say. Anyway, the power supply is this interesting kind of L shape, and we've got a cooling fan at the back, and it doesn't screw in, it just slides in. And what's really annoying about this thing is it's riveted, so I had to use my Dremel and just grind off the rivets. And it uses this custom connector, which is a Molex style connector, but it's you know, some weird ass pinout. And it's very hard to get this thing apart because you're kind of holding a part that you're trying to, like, you need to hold both sides, but because this is all coming off, it's kind of difficult to hold in a way that you can actually get it off sometimes. So on the inside we have fairly standard older switch mode power supply. These filter caps, one was really bulging, but it turns out it wasn't bulging itself, it was just the plastic plate, which is something you gotta watch out for. Sometimes when you open these up, it looks like one of these is bulging, or both. See how there's a little black plastic? Sometimes they bulge out big time and it looks like, oh man, this thing's garbage, but it turns out that it's actually just the plastic on this one. So yeah, fairly standard. I had to replace that capacitor, and one other one, just because, well, I mean, really you only need to replace C28 or C24, depending on the model. I just replaced all the like 100 mic ones that happen to be sitting around just because it's so easy to swap them out. And another kind of interesting thing about this power supply is the fan is connected with bare leads into, oh, get this power connector out of the way, into this little push button thing, so like a terminal block. You push it down and it releases the fan. I don't know why it's like that. I mean, most fans have a terminated end with like a JST connector, even in older ones. There's an NMB fan made in Thailand. Yep. It doesn't really get too loud, so I think it is thermally controlled in some way, because I know when I power this up with nothing hooked up to it, it does actually activate, but it just keeps it quiet, and it won't turn on unless it needs to. Maybe it's thermally controlled or load controlled. On the underside of the chassis, there's a speaker. Seems to work half decently with the wire running through. Floppy drive, again, a standard Sony 2 megabyte high density floppy drive, and it's held in place with little clips. And there's the retaining system for the new bus slots. The retaining system for the new bus slots is rather unique. I don't think I've seen it in any other Mac model. Anyway, there's removable cover plates, as with most slots of any description. And this weird pull tab thing, which, if I remember, just pulls forward. And once that's out, it gives it enough freedom to move this card, the NuBus cards, forward. There. Off the riser. And here we've got raster ops. I like the 1-800-SAY-COLOR phone number on it. But this is just an accelerated video card. I think it does 24-bit. And it was probably fairly pricey at the time. There's all these custom chips. British Telecom, or is BT British Telecom, or is it just a standalone company that's BT? I always assumed that was British Telecom, but now I look at it, it's a lowercase t. Not 100% sure. But anyway, this is a digital analog converter to make the RGB signals for the video output. And we've got some memory made by IBM, no less, 60 nanoseconds. And an AMI manufactured custom ASIC, made in Japan. There's also a bunch of other ones too. These 93, 94. Some flash. Maybe I'll try and pull that off. Take a look at that. But yeah, pretty standard older video card. Nothing on the back except the FCC. Oh, sorry, it's the Paintboard Prism. That's the model. I believe there's also a Paintboard Prism GT. So there, I think it was a faster one. I can't remember now. It might have been a cheaper one. But yeah, kind of standard NuBus video card. And if you look down here, you can see if there's a riser card, and the motherboard's actually like falling out. So let me see if I can just. That's one way to get the motherboard out. So here's the NuBus riser slot. made in Japan. Gemini Nubus PWB PowerBoard. I don't know why it would be called that. I don't know what PWB is. But Gemini is the code name for the Duo dock. Just some passive resistor packs and some standalone resistors on it. Nothing too interesting. Oh, and up here it actually does say it's the back plane. Onto the motherboard, which I should mention there are 3 different versions of the Duo dock. I actually forgot that there's 3. I thought it was just the Duo dock and the Duo dock 2. But there's actually a Plus model. Now the difference between the 1 and the 2, I believe, is just the lid. The lid was changed to make it a bit taller so that color PowerBook Duos could slide in. Whereas the thinner monochrome ones were able to fit in normally, but the thick ones, which were all the color displayed ones, just wouldn't work. So I think it was just that, and it also they also sold a replacement lid for the first Duo dock to make it a 2, just so it would fit properly. Now the Plus was different. It had a floating point unit and some level 2 cache to speed things up. And these things weren't used on any PowerBook installed that already had a faster processor like an 040 or whatever. The ejection system goes right here and it plugs into a small 2-pin header on the board, and it's just a regular DC motor and a little spring mechanism to reset it, and all this is doing is kicking this up. That's all it does. When this rotates, it just kicks these little teeth up and then back down, and they kind of snap back down with the spring. And that's really all it did. And there's little tabs on the little rotating part that translate into these 2 micro switches. And along here we've got, this is the power to a Scuzzy device, which I didn't really show. In the bottom half of the case there is a spot that you could put in a special tray to hold a Scuzzy hard drive. Mine didn't have it installed, you can tell because I don't have the cable for power, and there's a terminator installed in the Scuzzy port. And that's it. It's just a Scuzzy terminator. It should just be a resistor. And we've got a Sonic Ethernet controller and a couple VLSI chips, which are most likely video, and just the bus controller for all the additional ports. This is most likely just a digital analog converter for the video. Got a little switch at the top, which is the hidden power switch at the back. And we've got just some glue logic and video memory. And there appears to be a ROM right here. Oh, config. And a neat little locking package that we'll take a look at. And this, I believe, is the Scuzzy controller. This AMD chip is a AMD Scuzzy controller, and you've got some audio amplification and stuff like that. So where the power comes in, floppy drive connector. This goes over to the eject button, and this goes over to the speaker. So you can see there's actually the photo interrupter and a switch next to it. I'm not sure, but I think they only use this and the switch isn't used, and they probably just left the design open to whatever physical mechanism they're going to use on it, because I don't think it's actually touching anything, but it does say lock, so it's possible it goes to the locking mechanism somehow touches this when the lock is engaged. I do like how on many Apple boards of this time they do actually let you know what these things do. The new chip, that's obviously the new bus interface, bus transceivers, the new bus adapter, and Apple Duo Dock 2 board. Maybe I kept a different, does the front of mine say 2 on it? I can't remember now. No, it just says Duo Dock, so obviously I was using the different board. And what else we've got? Serial communication chip transceivers, and Scuzzy data, Combo Plus. It's probably Scuzzy and something else, probably audio, unless it's just the Scuzzy controller like I thought. And that's pretty much it. Doesn't really say too much else on this thing. Motor in, motor out. The back doesn't have anything on it, just some resistor packs and whatnot. So in order to get this configuration chip out, if you look very carefully, there's a little arrow telling you which direction to slide this thing, and I think you need a little bit of extra force on this. There, and then that pops off, and then you can just pop out the chip. Nothing. Does it say who makes this socket? No, it's just got a part number. Oh, I can't remember who that is. I thought it was like some kind of fancy like 3M socket or something. Let's see what kind of chip we're dealing with. If this is a ROM, usually the little Mini Pro universal programmers can't read them. But if it's a flash chip, like a standard flash chip, we should be able to. Oh, it looks like it may be flash. Yeah, oh, yeah, programming voltage 12.5 volts. So this should be readable. To get the Intel flash chip off the video card, all I did was run a Swiss Army knife along each edge, and it just pops out. Because the thing is, these things are looped over. The leads are looped over and tuck in underneath the chip, so it's kind of just sitting on the board, so you can just kind of run a knife around it. Now there of course is the chance that you'll destroy the chip doing this, but it's not like it's a big problem if it breaks. So you know, I just have to bend the pins back into place with some tweezers, and it's a lot quicker than pulling out the soldering iron, that's for sure. Fortunately, I'm not going to be able to read the configuration ROM because this is a 28-pin adapter and this is a 32-pin chip, and I don't have it. Despite the fact that I have all these adapters, I don't have the right one. So we won't be able to read that, but we should be able to read the flash, assuming none of the pins bent in a way that it won't read. But I did jam it in there, and we'll see what happens. I've got this Mini Pro programmer, which is the same one Dave Jones uses on the EEV blog. He had two of them, but this is the good one. It actually works really well, so we'll give this a shot. Alright, so we're going to fire up the Mini Pro programmer software, and we're going to tell it what chip we have, since it won't auto-detect this type of flash. Let me just N28 F010. Okay, so we've got several of them, and it's in a TSOP 32, I think. Yeah, we'll try that. Yeah. No, it's a PLC 32. What am I talking about? And there we go. And we'll try and read it. Okay. So it successfully read the chip. And there is, oh, there's some data in here. Nothing so far. Looks like it's all just code. Oh, hang on, I think I saw something. There's an alphabet. There's always at least one. Open venues. Set Venus. Set Venus 1 byte. Get SOG flag. So this is all just probably configuration data. Set perimeter RAM. EEPROM. Yeah, nothing too interesting, just actual data. Sometimes they have messages and whatnot in these. So this is the modem board. It's a little bit misleading because it's not actually a modem. There's no controller chip on it. It's really just passive stuff, a relay, a transformer, and that's about it. Just transistors and resistors and stuff. A little bit of shielding on their RJ11 connector. And the purpose of this board is so it can be tailored to the region that this dock is sold in. You just swap out this board, and in North America you get an RJ11, but in other countries you may not get that, so they can just swap it out. A neat little relay, very tiny. It's some kind of optical relay. Optical MOS relay. I've never actually seen that one before, but it's kind of cool. And yeah, it's basically the modem without the chip, because everything is done on the motherboard.